For some teams, that was the final day. For others, it's not quite the end just yet. Let's break down all of the defining games of the final day. Let's go. I will try and not smile through the entire episode of this podcast because I can imagine it might get quite unbearable, but it's been a pretty good 24 hours as you can imagine. If you could leave a like and subscribe, that would be fantastic. We're on the long journey to 10,000 subscribers, so you could do that for free. It'd be much appreciated. Lots of content coming your way between now and the end of the season. It finished Stevenage 2, Cheltenham 1, the non-penalty XG 2.02 to 1.77. This defeat for Cheltenham does confirm the relegation for the first time in 3 seasons. Although their relegation was mathematically complete yesterday, that mountain was made extremely steep after the start of the campaign that they were part of. The fact that Darrell Clarke has got them even thinking about survival on the final day, I think shows just how well he's done. But they do indeed finish in the final relegation spot in 21st, finishing the season on 44 points, 2 points behind Burton, who stayed up even though they lost their game on the road 3-0 to already relegated Fleetwood Town. In terms of the match yesterday, I think Cheltenham are another team that have been affected by what I'm going to call final day state. And essentially, that means you've got to do your job, but there are uncontrollables that can affect the way that you go and approach that game plan. And when you have to win, like Cheltenham did, it becomes a slight balancing act. And that balancing act, sometimes, like I said, is in your control and not in your control. They knew they had to win. Cheltenham had to commit bodies. That was naturally going to leave frailties defensively, and they were caught out. One was a penalty, one was a long ball through the middle or over the top, but quite a central ball. A very quick transitional play, classic Stevenage really this season. But it is a balancing act. I thought Cheltenham played really well. I thought they gave a really, really good account of themselves. I thought the running numbers were very, very high. They clearly were not shy of effort. The away fans were behind that goal, almost trying to shout that ball into the back of the net. And at one point, at 1-1, that looked like it could have been a possibility, but it wasn't to be because of the fact that Cheltenham knew they had to win the game and commit bodies forward. And like I said, that becomes a balancing act. They had 20 shots in that game yesterday, the most in League One on the final day, a really convincing expected goals. But like I said, that match against Stevenage doesn't define their campaign, although it does in the sense that it does mathematically relegate them. The start of the campaign is the reason why they're going to be in League 2 next season. Any chance of survival looked like a miracle, and Darrell Clarke, who's done a fantastic job, I think probably could have been in the running for manager of the season. If he did keep them up, it would have been, I think in his own words, his best achievement as a manager so far. It wasn't to be. It was just short of that. But they gave themselves a really good go. And they'll look back at certain results. They'll look back at the preparation in pre-season and in the summer, last summer, going into the campaign, because that wasn't good enough and that wasn't acceptable. And that, for me, is the reason why they finished in 21st and are relegated. But Cheltenham, after 3 years in League One, will be playing League 2 football next season. A defeat against Stevenage on the final day. Commiserations to them. Let's move up the table to the playoffs and head to Lincoln City, who hosted already champions Pompey. The non-penalty XG was 1.13 to 1.57. Let's begin with Lincoln City first. It's a final day to forget. Their season was in their hands and they did just fall short. Looking at the game in isolation, they had some magnificent chances. We're talking about game state. The penalty is a huge moment, not just in that game, but I think the entire playoff race. That is a defining moment. That's a moment that, look, it's very difficult for Danny Monjoy, I imagine, to dissect and think about at this moment in time. It's still always quite raw, but when you look back and assess that end to the campaign and that final day, that's a really, really big moment because the game can shift. You go 1-0 up. We know how Lincoln are at defending leads. We know what Lincoln are like defending in general. I wouldn't be surprised you go 1-0 up, you win that game 2 or 3-0 because, again, they'll Pompey most likely will commit, and they've got a fantastic threat on the break. Knowing that we're winning and they still had to win meant that that game plan was slightly adjusted, but that was a huge chance. But there were others as well. Ben House had a really good opportunity from close range, but as we've seen all season, chance conversion will set you out from the rest. And ironically, Pompey, who won the league, showed Lincoln probably the reason why they're league champions and why Lincoln just about fall short, because chance conversion is so important. Pompey took took theirs, and Lincoln, they had 2 shots on target, and of course, they didn't convert. But we come back to our phrase of the day, final day state. Lincoln knew that they had to go on and win the game. Oxford were 2 goals up at half-time, and Lincoln, the way that they like to approach games on the breaks, slightly more reserved, defensively being very strong in a block, and then looking to transition quickly. They had to do that even quicker, and they couldn't be as patient, they couldn't be as pragmatic, and they couldn't really go about the way that Skubala has installed things over the last couple of months, especially in the really good run in the last 2 months or so. And that would have affected things, but it's very, very niche. It only happens on the final day, hence the saying and the phrase that probably won't stick. But it's very difficult. And like I said, we come back to that penalty miss and the chances that they did miss. That goes in. You trust Lincoln defensively to see out that game. You trust them to be even more patient with the way that they defend. And a win would have done it for the Imps. But it's not to be. And they didn't take that opportunity. And in previous weeks, we've been so almost full of praise of the way that Lincoln have done just that. And it's not ironic. That's harsh. But it's quite telling that on the day where they needed to do that most, they weren't able to. Now, as much as missing out on the playoffs will hurt Lincoln at this moment in time, I think they've got a lot to look forward to, especially with Michael Skubala at the helm. To get them thinking about the playoffs, I think is an achievement on its own. They were nowhere near these places, and they've gone into the final day with it in their hands, and that's a huge achievement on its own. It won't feel like that now, of course it won't. It's going to feel pretty torrid for quite a few days, maybe weeks, probably until they kick another football next season. But it does show that this manager is very, very talented, very intelligent, and knows what to do in a window in January, because there were some fantastic recruits that I think have changed the way that Lincoln have approached the second half of the season, and generally the football has been very, very good. They've got to learn, and Skubala said that in his post-match interview. This is a really good opportunity for these young players to learn. It's quite cruel, but it's a really good learning curve and a lesson for them to understand that you're going to play fantastically well, but you can still fall short, and you can still not quite achieve what you want to achieve. And that's exactly what happened in the end. They went on a fantastic run, but similar to Cheltenham in a way, that start of the season and that Mark Kennedy period and the early parts of Skubala's time, that's the reason why Lincoln aren't there. Not this result yesterday, not the defeat against Wigan a few weeks ago. It's the fantastic run since a run that was pretty bad and, of course, led to a manager being sacked and Skubala taking a little bit of time to install his ideas and principles. But now that's happened, they look like a really good outfit. But it's a big block of the campaign. And 46 games is a lot of games. You look at Barnsley, Oxford, Peterborough, Bolton, but especially the teams in there as well. Blackpool have been very, very inconsistent. That's why they're not in the top 6 this season. Barnsley have been quite patchy. They just about do it. Oxford, had a really good start to the season. Patchy in the middle, a strong end, you'd say. For Lincoln, it was too much of a chunk of the campaign not picking up results. And they've done fantastically well to finish on 74 points, only 2 points away from the top 6, but it's just about them falling short. But again, so many lessons to learn. I'm so impressed with Skubala and have been. I think he's got a really unique set of principles that amaze me every week. Just the way that he carries himself, as well as ideas, his methods, they're quite fascinating. And we've done plenty of roundups on a Sunday talking about Skubala, talking about Lincoln and how he's trying to match these quite unique ideas together with that squad, and he's doing a really good job of it. And I think that's only going to get better with recruitment and a good backing from owners that we expect in the summer. There's a really interesting contrast between the way that he carries himself as a person and the way that he wants football to be played. He likes chaos on the pitch. He likes to be quite chaotic in the way that his team plays. It's quite heavy metal at times. It's high press. It's on the break. It's quite transitional quite quickly. And then you see his post-match interview and it's much more calmer. It's far more relaxed. And I like that. I really do like it. It's quite a special contrast, but one that's going to leave Lincoln, I think, in a very special place with the time and the patience that he's going to need, and of course the financial backing as well. But the building blocks are in place. Lincoln will be back next season. I'm a strong believer of that. There's encouraging signs everywhere. Lessons will be learned. He will learn lessons as well as a manager that's still new to this first team professional management game. Let's see what happens. But they'll be back. It'll feel very, very painful. but they've got a lot of building blocks in place to build on in the coming years, but I expect next season too. As for Portsmouth, a very simple message to you. Congratulations, enjoy the championship, and a massive thank you. Just another professional title-winning performance. They wanted to win the season in style. They wanted to win the season with a really good away performance. They've been fantastic on the road this season. They've travelled in numbers, and the players have rewarded those supporters with some quite astonishing performances and results too. And they've finished the season in very, very good fashion. And like I said, thank you. Thank you to Mousinho. I knew that he still had the yellow heart in there somewhere. It's probably covered in blue for the most part, but there's a still tinge of yellow there, and he's helped us out. In fact, we did a full breakdown on Pompey and their title-winning season. It's titled How Portsmouth Won League One. Definitely, if you haven't, check that out after this. I thought the strong mentality, the adaptability, the real desire to win games of football, and those are all things we spoke about. I saw that yesterday. And it's a quite beautiful way to end the season. All of the key ingredients that we spoke about them using all season came out in that performance. A team that had nothing to play for against a team that had everything to play for. And Portsmouth still produced a performance that wouldn't have been, I think, dissimilar to one in February and March, where they're still chasing for that promotion into the Championship, which I think says quite a lot. In fact, a lot about Mousinho and his fantastic group of players. Congratulations to Pompey. Lots of content still involving Pompey in the next couple of weeks. But of course, if I don't see you until then, enjoy the Championship and give it a bloody good go. On the final day, Derby County secure promotion to the Championship with a 2-0 win over Carlisle United. The XG 0.63 to 0.44. Derby couldn't have finished their League One journey in more Derby County fashion. Less possession, a very low expected goals of 0.63, less shots, less passes, far less corners as well, but they win the game. And they keep their 22nd clean sheet of the season. They'll be playing Championship football next season, and they totally deserve it. Has a team been more efficient? With Derby County this season, I think there's only one place to start, and that is Paul Warne. I'm going to miss him in League One. His charisma, his honesty, his clarity, his ability to highlight the basics of professional football. I remember that line he said a couple of weeks ago, it's tough to win games of football. It's a difficult thing to do. Sometimes we can overcomplicate things, and I'm a massive hypocrite in saying that, because I'm somebody who sits down and analyses games of football to the detail, and it's sometimes important to strip it back and look at the basics. And Paul Warne, it's not a basic approach, it's definitely not, it's very, very tactical, but it's a different type of football, and it's one that does sort of hinge more on the hard-working, running the distances, playing the percentages at times type of approach, but it's still just as complex and even more demanding, I'd say. But he has got a great ability to highlight those basics and talk about it being difficult, it being demanding. He adores hard work more than most, and that is probably because he knows that hard work is at the heart of his footballing methods. It's about the work without the ball. It's about being diligent, about being organised, the ability to transition very quickly. It took time at the start of the season, and when we look at Derby, and I know this is a very relaxed roundup, we're having more of a discussion about these teams and what they've done and how they've done it. And I highlighted the point against Carlisle on the final day. They win the game 2-0 in the most Derby County fashion. It will take time, and not every Derby County fan bought into his way straight away, but previous Paul Warne teams were evidence. When it clicks, winning becomes a habit, and consistency is so important. We speak about it time and time again. Consistency in League One is what's going to get you into those top positions and get you out of the division, ultimately. And Pompey had it, Derby had it. They finished on 97 points and 92 points. There's a very, very clear pattern there. 5 points higher than Bolton Wanderers in third in the end. It required a little bit of time. It won't always be pretty, but I used the word efficiency and actually binary. Yeah, it's about being binary and looking at the points. Sometimes it will be ugly, and you look past it being ugly or attractive, and you sort of just go, right, how do we win this game of football? How do we win? Because drawing isn't going to get us enough points to get what we want to get to. Losing definitely won't. regardless of what we do and how we get there, can we make sure we get the full amount of points? And it's as simple as that. It won't, that might sound like a very silly thing to say, but Derby County and Paul Warne are focused on the binary objectives, and that is totally points. Other managers probably are a little bit more stuck in their ways, and in a good way and a bad way, in terms of how they want the football to be played. And of course, Paul Warne has got that, but it's very unique and very different to that modern manager. He's quite traditional, very manager driven. He's a very quite motivational kind of guy, and you can see that with his interviews. Like I said, I think they're going to be missed in this division. And finally, I want to speak about this magnetic pull between club and promotion. It's worked against teams. I look at Sunderland, I look at Cheltenham, Pompey to a certain extent, and I guess sometimes I felt quite uncomfortable talking about that. People that say we're too big to be here, we're too big to be in League One, we should be at here for X, Y and Z reasons. But when we speak about size, we speak about gravitas, I think at times that will pull teams out of trouble. And when you've got a very, very good manager, and when you've got a very experienced set of players, and that aligned recruitment in the summer was crucial with Derby County to pull them out of the difficult moments. And at the start of the season, there were quite a few difficult moments. But eventually that gravitas will pull you out of situations, not on its own, but it will help. Fans, manager, experienced playing group. You put that triangle together, and Pompey fans, if you watch that video, you'll know what the triangle is all about. Fans, manager, playing staff. You align all of those very strong bonds, you've got all of the chance of being successful. Derby County are successful. On the final day, only a point was required. They got all three against Carlisle United. Of course, were relegated a few weeks ago. It finishes Derby 2, Carlisle 0. They'll be in the Championship next season. How could I avoid it? I was always going to speak about it. Exeter 1, Oxford United 2, the non-penalty XG 0.44 to 1.03. Oxford United start the day in 7th place, outside the top 6, and finish in 5th. Don't think it's quite sunk in yet. I'm so happy for Des Buckingham. I'm so happy for that group of players who have been through quite a bit this season. And a team that finishes in 5th, you sort of go, yeah, they've been 5th. It sounds comfortable. It sounds like they've been there for quite a few weeks. Obviously, that's not the case. And this group of players have been through a bit. They didn't start the season with Des Buckingham. A lot of change. And in the end, we've come out of it, I think, really well. But I'm so happy for Des Buckingham, who has really started to now nail down his principles and this identity that we can really get behind as Oxford United supporters. It started against Fleetwood, but Burton was a great example. The Peterborough game obviously does stand out. Oxford United's opposition, of course, in the playoffs. But we've had to stick by him, and that felt like a non-negotiable when he came in, but some really disappointing results and inconsistency within games meant that at times, we were questioning whether or not this was the right appointment, or definitely the right time for this type of appointment to be made, because it was going to take a lot of transition. Ironically, that's the way Des Buckingham wants his team to play. But coming from Mumbai, coming from India, working in New Zealand and never managing in England before, that was always going to take a little bit of time, and I don't think we fully understood that. And perhaps we thought the adjustment was going to be slightly quicker than what it was, but remember, he joined the club when Oxford were in 2nd or 3rd place in a really strong position. That for me is harder than joining when a club is struggling, because at least you can go to the galvanisation and almost pick the group up, strip it back to basics. But this team's being coached by a really good previous manager who's got them in a really strong position and got them playing, although maybe because they came through the same group and management group, of course the City Football Group, maybe we sort of were slightly naive in the way that we looked at that. Although they come through the same group, they're not going to play the exact same way. In fact, there's a lot of differences between the two managers. So again, there was a playing style adjustment and a personal adjustment as well. So yeah, I'm really happy for him. I'm really happy we've got 2 more games at least. I'm really happy that Des Buckingham is going into this playoff campaign now with a bit of rhythm and momentum and proof that his style is very successful. It won't be as easy against Peterborough this time that it was a few weeks ago. I can guarantee you of that. But it's going to be interesting. And Oxford have got a chance. And Des Buckingham spoke about always being in and around those strong positions. And at times that felt quite gruelling, especially when we were losing 5-0 against Bolton. That felt like a really defining game, and one that almost created 2 simple paths. Could have been make or break for Des. But he said, we're going to stay in and around that area in a strong position, end the season strong, and we've done that. At times it felt like he was over-promising during that difficult period, but we are in 5th. He hasn't over-promised. The principles have been nailed down. The ideas are evident. They are passing the eye test, if you like. And again, we finish in a really strong position. And Oxford will head into the playoffs against Peterborough at home next Saturday. I am already feeling pretty nervous, as you can imagine. So the final around the grounds of the 23-24 season. Barnsley 1, Northampton 1. Barnsley just about cling on to a playoff spot in 6th. Derby 2, Carlisle 0. Exeter 1, Oxford 2. Fleetwood 3, Burton 0. Burton do stay up despite that 3-0 defeat. Lincoln 0, Pompey 2. Peterborough 3, Bolton 3. A great game of football there. Port Vale 0, Cambridge 0. Reading 3, Blackpool 2. Shrewsbury 1, Fleeton Orient 3. Stevenage 2, Cheltenham 1. Wigan 2, Bristol Rovers 0. If you did enjoy this final roundup of the season, a more relaxed, reflective one if you like, please make sure you leave a like and subscribe. Take care.